Donald Trump is throwing his own Department of Justice and his own FBI under the bus. That shouldn't surprise you. He hates the Department of Justice. He hates the FBI, and they shouldn't have expected anything less. Now, Donald Trump continues to pardon some of the worst people who were investigated by the FBI and the DOJ under the Trump regime. And Trump is bragging about pardoning these people. And it is really, really bad stuff. I want to highlight an example of this for you right now. And you can see how Donald Trump threw his own DOJ under the bus. So I'm reading you a press release from March 21, 2025. Who was in office 2 months ago, March 21, 2025? If you think the answer is former President Biden, you're living in a MAGA world. Donald Trump was in office, unfortunately. I would have liked it to be former President Biden. But here's what Trump's DOJ posted on March 21, 2 months ago. Former Culpeper sheriff sentenced to 10 years on federal bribery charges. Sheriff Scott Jenkins received over $75,000 in cash payments in exchange for auxiliary deputy sheriff appointments. The former sheriff of Culpeper County, Virginia, was sentenced today, remember this is March 2025, to 10 years in federal prison for accepting over $75,000 in bribes in exchange for appointing numerous Northern Virginia businessmen as auxiliary deputy sheriffs within his department. In December 2024, a jury convicted Scott Howard Jenkins, 53, of Culpeper, Virginia, of 1 count of conspiracy, 4 counts of honest services fraud, and 7 counts of bribery concerning programs receiving federal funds. Scott Jenkins violated his oath of office and the faith of the citizens of Culpeper County, placed in him when he engaged in a cash for badges scheme. Acting United States Attorney Zachary Teeley said today, "We hold our elected law enforcement officials to a higher standard of conduct, and this case proves that when those officials use their authority for unjust personal enrichment, the Department of Justice will hold them accountable. I'm grateful for the FBI for their tireless work on this investigation. Every law enforcement officer takes an oath to serve and protect the community. That includes following the law they've sworn to uphold. I am proud of the diligent work of our investigative team on this case to bring Jenkins to justice," said Special Agent in charge of the FBI's Richmond Division, Stanley M. Meader. According to court documents and evidence presented at trial, Jenkins accepted cash bribes and bribes in the form of campaign contributions from co-defendants Rick Rahim, Frederick Gumbinner, James Metcalf, as well as at least 5 others, including 2 FBI undercover agents. Rahm, Gumbinner, and Metcalf have all pled guilty for their roles in the conspiracy. In return for the bribes, Jenkins appointed each of the bribe payers as auxiliary deputy sheriffs, a sworn law enforcement position, and issued them official Culpeper County Sheriff's Office badges and credentials. The bribe payers were not trained or vetted and did not render any legitimate services to the sheriff's office or the citizens of Culpeper County. In addition, Jenkins pressured other local officials to approve a petition filed in Culpeper County Circuit Court by Rahim, a convicted felon, to restore his right to possess a firearm, and which falsely stated that Rahim resided in Culpeper County. Then it talks about all of the people from the Public Integrity Division, from the FBI, and from others who worked on this case. March 2025. Donald Trump pardons that guy Scott Jenkins. Here's what Donald Trump posted on Memorial Day. Donald Trump on Memorial Day did not make any posts that talked about our troops. He didn't make any posts that talked about the sacrifice that they made. This is what he was talking about. Sheriff Scott Jenkins, his wife Patricia, and their family have been dragged through hell by a corrupt and weaponized Biden DOJ. I'm pretty sure, Donald, in March 2025, you were in office, but go on. In fact, during his trial, when Sheriff Jenkins tried to offer exculpatory evidence to support himself, the Biden judge refused to allow it, shut him down, and then went on a tirade. As we have seen in federal, city, and state courts, radical left or liberal judges allow into evidence what they feel like, not as what is mandated under the Constitution and the rules of evidence. Pause there. You know, someone like a Scott Jenkins has the ability to appeal it, to a circuit court of appeals. He could appeal it to the United States Supreme Court if he thinks that exculpatory evidence was not allowed in. But as I read for you on the release, the people who are his co-conspirators, each one of them pled guilty to accepting the bribes from this guy. So all of the people who were in it and involved in it, they pled guilty as well. It goes on to say, this sheriff is a victim of an overzealous Biden Department of Justice and doesn't deserve to spend a single day in jail. He is a wonderful person who was persecuted by the radical left monsters and left for dead. This is why I, as president, see fit to end his unfair sentence and grant Sheriff Jenkins a full and unconditional pardon. Now, what I believe Donald Trump is trying to do in general, as a general proposition, whether it's his pardoning of the violent January 6th insurrectionists, whether it's his pardoning of people who engage in bribery schemes, is, one, Donald Trump's trying to normalize bribery, right? As Donald Trump hosts crypto events at his Virginia resort, as Donald Trump accepts $400 million 747 jets from the Qataris, Trump wants to normalize the idea of bribery in general and make it open business for sale as long as you're bribing Republican officials. That's my opinion of it. I think also Donald Trump wants to build a militia as well when he eventually declares martial law, and he's going to want to activate his people who he wants to give an FU to the DOJ and the FBI and undermine them and try to force them out as well. But he wants his brown shirts. He wants his militia. He wants his violent thugs to be the ones, because he knows that the popular peaceful uprising against him in democracy summer is growing. Now, even if this next pardon doesn't take place, I think the Trump regime is leaking that it is looking into this. Derek Chauvin, at least on the federal charges, Trump has no ability to pardon Derek Chauvin on the state charges within the state of Minnesota. But Derek Chauvin is the person who brutally and disgustingly murdered George Floyd. We saw what happened. He's a murderer. He's a killer. And he was convicted in state and federal court. Derek Chauvin. The question is will Donald Trump pardon Derek Chauvin on federal crimes? He would still then be serving prison for the state crimes because Trump can't do that. But is Trump trying to send this message? I think we should keep our eyes out on that, because I predict ultimately that Trump will pardon Derek Chauvin on the federal charges. You also take a look at Donald Trump's pardon in Las Vegas. Now, the crimes that this individual, Michelle Fiore, who was dubbed Lady Trump, people called her Lady Trump. This is a lady who was despised on city council, despised by the Las Vegas Review-Journal for what she did. She did one of the most despicable things. She was convicted of having basically a fundraiser for fallen police officers and then using the funds for herself. And I'll describe what went down in a little bit, but she had not been sentenced yet. And before her sentencing, and the Trump DOJ, I think, was going to go forward with her sentencing, but before the sentencing could take place, Donald Trump pardoned her. Former Las Vegas City Council member Michelle Fiore, dubbed Lady Trump, was pardoned after being convicted. She faced up to 140 years in prison. A Nevada newspaper owned by Trump mega donor Miriam Adelson savaged the Trump's decision to pardon this Republican councilwoman who was convicted of using donations intended to fund a statue of a fallen police officer to pay for her own cosmetic surgery. The Las Vegas Review-Journal, owned by the billionaire Miriam Adelson, described the decision to pardon her as a debasement of presidential pardon power in a scathing editorial published after Trump granted clemency to Michelle Fiore, a former Las Vegas councilwoman and Nevada state lawmaker. Fiore was convicted of fraud last year. Federal prosecutors said at trial that she had raised more than $70,000 for the statue of a Las Vegas police officer who was fatally shot in 2014 in the line of duty, but had instead spent it on cosmetic surgery, rent, and her daughter's wedding. In addition, pardons are typically reserved for those who were wrongly convicted or the victim of some miscarriage of justice. There is no evidence that either of those occurred in this case. The pardon by Trump was brief, contained no explanation, and was an affront to the federal jury that heard her case, and sends precisely the wrong message to public officials tempted to enrich themselves through their other means. So what Trump wants to do, though, is saying, look, public officials, as long as you're full MAGA, as long as you're MAGA cult, as long as you're whatever, then all good. Do what you want to do. But we're going to go after our political opponents. But if you're MAGA, I will give you a pardon. Now, one of the things that Michelle Fiore is trying to do right now, she's trying to get her judgeship back. She showed up right after the pardon. She's also a judge. And so she showed up for her judgeship and she's like, I'm ready to be a judge again. She's a state court judge. And the judicial committee now has to look over her, like, well, what do you do now that she was pardoned of the crimes? Obviously, it would be an easy thing to ban her once she was convicted. She wouldn't be a judge. But now that there's a pardon, and she's like, nope, I'm going to be a judge. Can you imagine having your case heard before Michelle Fiore in Vegas? That she's your judge. And when Trump attacks judges, well-qualified judges from the top universities, mind you, this is one of the reasons Trump goes after Harvard and attacks it as well. Trump attacks our best and brightest, but he wants Michelle Fiore's as judges. Like, would it shock you if Donald Trump picked Michelle Fiore to be a federal judge? Wait until we start seeing Trump's picks to become federal judges when he rolls them out. My prediction is some of them might not even be lawyers, and some of them are going to be people he pardoned, and it's going to be some of the worst of the worst. But again, that's just my opinion. But you see, if you're working at the DOJ, if you're working at the FBI, the message this sends, we're going to spend all these years doing these diligent investigations, get convictions in front of the jury, only for Donald Trump to pardon people without explanation simply because they're MAGA people. Tell me what you think about it. But again, I wanted to go through this with you in a lot of detail. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 5 million subscribers. And thank you for watching.
Help me! Help me! Help me!
Ace!
Thanks. Resources here. Thanks.
takedown!
Thanks.
Medkit for everybody!
First doom!
Enemy spotted!